by reopening illegally.
And what I need is to provide for my family.
And the culture inside Oregon's capital was supposed to change after an embarrassing sexual harassment scandal in 2017.
No comment.
But now there's even more accusations against another leader.
Sexual harassment, as well as hostile workplace.
So what has changed? And Portlanders officially have one fewer reason to take their clothes off in public. Here's the story.
Work on those tan lines, dude. Hey, it is day 44 of this. If you're looking for some significance there, according to a numerology website that I found on Google, the number symbolizes business, efficiency, building, balance, confidence, discipline, efficiency, and focus. And since it listed efficiency twice, I enjoyed the irony of how much it wasted my time. And now yours. Welcome to The Story. I'm Dan Haggerty. We want to hear from you tonight, so email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, or use Twitter and the hashtag HeyDan. It's the most 44-ish way to get a hold of us. Hey, let's start with some good news. I like good news. Who doesn't like good news? We can tell you that a few things here in the Northwest are starting to open back up. Today, Governor Brown said starting tomorrow, these state parks will open during the day. There's going to be some limited parking around there to keep crowds down, but otherwise, have at it. You probably noticed that none of those parks there are on the coast or in the gorge. Those areas are not quite open yet. And everybody at home who's already halfway through an email telling me that's not a good thing. We need to stay at home. Look, I hear you, and you have a great point. This news isn't an invitation to go throw a massive barbecue. Look, I know we're not kids, but it kind of reminds me of when my dad tacked an extra hour on my curfew. He said something like, "I think you can handle it. Don't prove me wrong." All right, the rules relax tomorrow, and the gorgeous weather starts on Thursday. So can we just prove that we can have nice things? I think we can do it. Keep your distance from each other. Wash your hands. Wear a mask if you're going into a business or anything. If you're sick, even a little, I don't care if it's 85 and sunny, please stay home. Same goes in Washington. Today, phase 1 of their plan to reopen went into effect, and that means that some state lands partially reopened. But just like in Oregon, they're keeping their coasts closed for now, too. But other than those parks, everywhere else that's still required to stay closed is still required to stay closed. Remember, in Oregon, that's a long list of businesses that Governor Brown laid out in her stay-at-home executive order. Everything from art galleries to ski resorts to spas. If it's on this list, it's closed because the governor's office thinks it's too hard to practice social distancing. Which brings us to one business owner in Salem that is taking Governor Brown's executive order and ripping it in half, or at least right before the part that lists salons. The owner's name is Lindsey Graham, no relation to the senator. She owns Glamour Salon, and today customers were back for the first time since the state ordered her to shut the doors.
I can't speak for other businesses. I can speak for other business owners. I know that they need to make a living. If they can open their business safely, I would encourage that. I can only speak for myself, and what I need is to provide for my family.
All right, so she's encouraging people to open their businesses, go to businesses, things like that. The governor, meanwhile, put out a very strong statement this afternoon, discouraging. Which brings us to today's quote of the day from that statement. Quote, "A public health crisis should never be used as a marketing opportunity." The governor warns both businesses and customers that violate her executive order could be fined $1,250, even go to jail for a month. That said, Lindsey Graham, as you can see there, was surrounded by a bunch of people. She didn't contact us to market anything. She's on our air because we wanted to tell her story. She didn't call us, just to make that clear. Now, I know some people were tweeting at us using the hashtag HeyDan, wondering about her employees. What if they don't want to go back to work? What if they're afraid of getting the virus? Can they still qualify for unemployment? Now, on the state's COVID-19 resources website, it says, if a worksite cannot follow social distancing guidelines issued by government or public health officials, the employee may continue claiming benefits each week. But look, Lindsey's Salon is one of more than like 24,000 licensed salons alone in Oregon. Most of them are obeying the governor's executive order, and most of them are staying closed. But as long as they're not making any money and dealing with Oregon's painfully slow Reagan-era unemployment system, it's not going to be any easier for them to survive. And I say Reagan-era because it's from the 80s, not because the computers are Republicans. Look, we're still hearing about people who have lost their jobs, people who have yet to get any unemployment at all, people who still haven't even gotten that $1,200 stimulus check yet. And if you think about it, look at the calendar, we've hit the first of the month twice since this whole mess started. People are stretched thin, forced to make impossible choices, like illegally opening their businesses just to keep food on the table. All right, let's talk about our big story tonight, which is all about allegations of sexual harassment in the workplace, and one workplace in particular. This one, the Oregon Capitol. Unfortunately, the site of several harassment allegations over the past few years. This time, they're centering on this guy, Representative Diego Hernandez, a Democrat representing Portland. Yesterday, we broke the news that 7 people have accused him either of sexual harassment or creating a hostile work environment. The accusations against Hernandez are so serious that he's been ordered not to contact his accusers, and he has to give 24 hours notice before showing up to work at the Capitol. On top of that, Maggie Vespa reports that Oregon's House Speaker is now calling on him to resign.
State Representative Diego Hernandez has talked to us several times before.
It's just morally unjust, and people should just stand up because it's the right thing to do.
Here he is in June of 2018 at a protest calling for immigration reform. But the Democrat from Portland isn't talking now, at least not on camera.
Somebody had disclosed information related to an incident with the representative.
Hernandez also didn't speak on his own behalf at Monday's hearing, where the House Special Committee on Conduct were briefed on allegations against the representative from at least 7 people.
Sexual harassment, as well as hostile workplace.
Legislative Equity Officer Jackie Sandmeyer, who fields these kinds of accusations in the legislature, said the first 2 came via mandatory reporters. That can be a lawmaker or a staff supervisor. Then, said Sandmeyer, more complaints followed.
And today I've had 5 women reach out confidentially.
Sandmeyer didn't describe the complaints in detail and didn't name the accusers, only saying they interacted with Hernandez professionally. An independent investigation is expected soon. In the meantime, the committee took interim measures, ordering Hernandez not to contact his accusers and requiring he provide
24 hours notice before arriving in the Capitol.
Those measures went into effect immediately. This is not the first time allegations against Hernandez have played out in public. Back in March, a woman he had lived with last year filed a restraining order against the representative, claiming he was violent, especially while intoxicated. She said he would frequently mix alcohol, narcotic pills, and marijuana, writing on one occasion, he was menacing and visibly threatening, throwing things, and I was paralyzed with fear and thought that he'd hit me if I moved. A judge has since dismissed the order, but according to the Willamette Week, a no-contact order remains. Because of that ordeal, Hernandez took a short leave of absence from work. House Speaker Tina Kotek, as a result, removed him from all committee assignments. In light of these new allegations, she released a statement, quote, "The House Conduct Committee's action is a very serious development. I believe Representative Hernandez should resign from the legislature and focus completely on getting the support he needs."
Okay, Maggie Vespa joining us now. So the representative didn't do a traditional kind of on-camera interview with us, but did send us an email statement.
Yeah, his email had a statement in it, and that statement had an allegation of its own in it. So I want to show you the statement now from Representative Hernandez. It reads, quote, "I have no idea what the concerns raised are or by whom. I do know that there has been an organized campaign against me recently to get me out of the office I was duly elected to, and I was threatened this would happen if I didn't resign." The statement goes on to say, "Due process matters. I ask that people withhold judgment until the investigation is complete. I believe women's allegations need to be heard and then investigated by a credible process/sources, and Rule 27 is a new rule, but I'm hoping it's a fair one." And he's referring there to a new sort of personnel rule that is meant to help victims of harassment and workplace abuse basically file those complaints and then be protected while the process carries out. So that's what he's talking about there. And by the way, Dan, that came in minutes after yesterday's hearing. So he, responded to us right away, basically.
Right, and again, I think everybody should withhold judgment and allow this investigation to play out, but we do have to speak about something that I think a lot of people are wondering if they're looking at their ballots, and that's the fact that he is up for re-election, that he is running unopposed, that we are hearing from the House Speaker telling him he should resign. What could play out here? What's the possibility that we could see happen?
Yeah, so as you said, he's the only Democrat running for his seat in this May primary, and he's coming from Portland, a very left-leaning district. So in other words, no one is poised to unseat him. That said, if he were to heed the House Speaker's call and step down, or, and again, this is early in the investigation, it's just getting started, but hypothetically, if something were to happen and he were to be removed from his office, then county officials would step in and appoint a successor. But again, that's a big if. We just want to point out the investigation is just getting underway, and those measures that were put in place by the committee yesterday were the interim measures, just be in place while this gets going. So we're going to watch this all kind of play out. But obviously, as you pointed out, the timing is really pivotal as we go into this election.
All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you. The workplace culture of the Oregon Capitol has been a known problem for a few years now. So how did we get here? Let's go back to 2017. That's when several women accused then Senator Jeff Cruz of sexual harassment. One of those women was another senator, Sarah Gelser, along with 2 interns in his office. They claimed he touched them inappropriately and made sexual comments. He denied it.
Several women have said that you made them uncomfortable, you continued to harass them.
No comment. We're going through a formal process. We will let the process play out.
He eventually resigned, but still denied the allegations. The 2 interns who made those accusations filed a lawsuit against Cruz and other legislative leaders. The interns said they failed to protect them.
Everyone knew it happened all the time. I mean, he was hugging me and touching me in front of other elected officials in meetings.
They eventually settled, along with 7 other victims who say they were also sexually harassed at the Capitol. Those complaints against Cruz triggered an investigation by the Bureau of Labor and Industries, and that uncovered allegations against other lawmakers, like Representative David Gomberg, who was accused of asking for birthday spankings from interns and joking about one being a stripper. He publicly apologized. Overall, the Bureau's report found the Capitol was a hostile work environment and accused leaders of letting harassment persist. The legislature was ordered to put new systems in place to report and deal with harassment complaints, and all lawmakers and staff had to go through sexual harassment training. And that's how we got here.
So let's talk more about those changes put in place and whether they're working. The legislature created the Nonpartisan Legislative Equity Office to handle concerns and oversee anti-harassment training. Reports of misconduct also have to go through an independent investigator now, and the statute of limitations on when someone can make a conduct complaint has been extended from 1 year to 5 years. Now, we actually saw some of these changes play out last week during a conduct hearing involving a different lawmaker. A woman said that Representative David Gomberg made her feel uncomfortable when he joked about being prescribed medication that would cause an erection. Gomberg said that he was actually talking about a health condition and the conversation wasn't sexual in nature. The committee agreed and they cleared him. An outside investigator handled that case, and the Legislative Equity Office got involved. So that's good. That's what's supposed to happen. But lawmakers also brought up some issues with how things are being handled now, like the fact that if something is reported to a lawmaker or supervisor, that triggers a formal investigation, even if the accuser doesn't want that.
In this particular case, the complainant wished to remain anonymous and wished not to have a formal complaint. And I think our process, to an extent, has failed this complainant.
They say they're looking for ways to improve things on that front. We can't say also that others are weighing in on these newer cases, too. We mentioned Senator Sarah Gelser earlier, one of the women who says that she was harassed by Jeff Cruz in 2017. And last night, she tweeted about the accusations against Hernandez. She said she's heard directly from 2 of his accusers, and she believes them. She also says they should not let anyone make them feel guilty for telling the truth.
The naked bike ride is canceled about as much as public nudity is illegal in Portland. Only kinda. And we dip into the KGW vault to wish a happy birthday to a local guy named Beard. James Beard. When the story continues.
Hey, we're back. Thanks to everybody writing in using the hashtag #HeyDan. Last night we read an email from a viewer kind of angry because since she was not affiliated with any political party in Oregon, no federal or state races appeared on her ballot. And that's because in Oregon you need to be either a Republican or a Democrat to vote in either of the primary elections. And that's what we said. But somebody wanted us to clarify, and that somebody is Ken Smith, who is Oregon's independent candidate for Secretary of State. Tweeted, "Hey Dan, primary voters who are independent or non-affiliated voters are able to vote in the independent party of Oregon's primary. Please update your report. Thanks in advance." Anytime, Ken. We got your back. And Ken is exactly right. Absolutely right. Oregon's independent party has opened up its primary to Oregon's nearly 1 million unaffiliated voters. And to be clear, under Oregon law, Republicans and Democrats could open their primaries too to those voters. They just haven't. And it's hard to blame the independent party for wanting more voters, since last year the party lost its major party status because it got less than 5% of the vote. That means they can no longer hold primary elections at the expense of the public. So being generous and then getting burned for it is like maybe the worst combination. I talked to Kyla Boshi earlier, who talked to a guy who tried to donate just part of his $1,100 kicker rebate. Key word there is tried.
Okay, Kyla Boshi joining us now, and you heard from a viewer, Kyle, who thought they were donating a portion of their kicker, and it turns out they donated all of it. Where did the confusion happen?
Yeah, quite a surprise for this guy. He filled out his income tax return like a lot of folks, and there's a box where it says kicker donation. And basically, if you check that, your kicker goes to a state schools fund to help school kids. He thought, well, that's a good idea. I'll check that box. And the second box he filled out was $75, thinking he'd be donating a portion of his kicker. When in fact that wasn't the case. The state came back to him weeks later and said, no, it's not $75. We're taking $1,100.
Is he on the hook for this now? I mean, he had a little bit of he obviously didn't want to give the entire kicker. Is he stuck?
In some ways, yes and no. So the State Department of Revenue says, hey, listen, it's clear. If you read the fine print in the instructions, you either give it all or not at all, right? You're all in or you're not giving anything, money at all. They also say it's irrevocable. Now, he's in a unique situation because of the coronavirus pandemic. They delayed the filing deadline, so he's got a little extra time. He can file an amended return. He should be actually okay.
Now, people watching it might say, okay, now I won't make that mistake, but, you know, that guy's heart was in the right place. What if I still do want to donate a portion of my kicker? Is that possible?
So, yes, it's a little more challenging, though. Basically, the Department of Revenue says, listen, if you want to donate just a portion, not all of it, there is a way to do it. Basically, file your claim, get that rebate rather, with your kicker. Then, at a later date, write a check to the Department of Education, kind of like you would any other contribution or donation.
Makes sense. Kyla Boshi, thank you, sir.
So it's about dinner time. We're going to whet your appetites a little bit, talk about some food and the people who make our food. Yesterday, the James Beard Award finalists were announced, and Portland had a really heavy showing, as we always do. We dominated the Best Chef Northwest category. Peter Cho of Han Oak, Gregory Gourdet of Departure, Katie Millard of Coquine, Kristen Murray of Maurice. Congratulations to all of them, and good luck to Gregory Gourdet, who's still representing Portland on this current season of Top Chef. Now, Portland was also the only city besides Los Angeles to have 2 restaurants nominated for Best New Restaurants. So congratulations to Eam and Gato Gato. By the way, both of them are still doing takeout dining, so please support these guys if you can. The food is amazing, of course, and they and all of the rest of Portland's restaurants need all the help they can get right now. And we're going to find out the winners of the James Beard Awards on May 27th. And while we're talking about James Beard, we wanted to go ahead and dig into the KGW vault, because not only was he born here in Portland, but today would have been his 117th birthday. We found some old photographs of him, including one with legendary chef Julia Child, who called him the quintessential American cook. And he's from right here.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Safino. We've got some quintessentially great Mother's Day weekend weather on the way, but this got me thinking about our spring weather and our springs in general in the face of a changing climate. So, some graphics for you about that in Portland from our friends at Climate Central. The first one about spring warming. The average spring temperature since 1970, so over the last 50 years, has been steadily going up. Some years are down, but on average, that's what the solid line there is. If you do a best fit curve, you end up with about 2 degrees warmer compared to 1970. And 2 degrees, that's a significant warming in terms of a 50-year trend there, and in terms of an average temperature for a season. Now, what about this? We'll move on to our how many warm days we have in the spring. and we judge that by days above the average high temperature or the average temperature, and those have also been going up. 14 more days per spring, per season, with above average temperatures compared to 50 years ago. Again, that is significant. That's 2 weeks more where we're having days that are above average as compared to below average temperatures. So what that means is, if you're a gardener, that means you can plant your gardens earlier. Look at this. This is the date of the last freeze, meaning temperatures of 32 or lower. It's gone from late March to before March 15th over that 50-year period. So again, we've seen a dramatic change in our growing season starting basically about 2 weeks earlier here in the Portland season. So again, perhaps good news for gardeners, not great news if it's also good news for mosquitoes, I guess, too, because that gives them an earlier start. And it's not just Portland. This trend is being echoed pretty much all around the country. The only area that's really not seeing it is in the upper Midwest, where temperatures have been actually decreasing a bit over the last little bit. But again, you can see most of the country seeing above temperatures climbing in spring over the last 50 years. And that dovetails into our forecast for the weekend. It's going to get hot. I think 80s are hot for May, so we're going to call it hot. 80s in the Western Valleys Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The warmest day will be Saturday, mid-80s in the Valley, maybe even record highs. To put that into historical perspective, we only hit the 80s in May, historically, 11% of the time, but we're going to have a solid 3 days of that, Dan. Back to you.
Sounds good, Matt. Thank you. All right, time to check in on one of Portland's many vices in a segment we like to call Vice News. All right, I regret to inform all the nudists of the Rose City that the World Naked Bike Ride has been canceled. Well, you know, kinda. The organizers said that there isn't going to be any kind of official start or location announced, but if you really want to get naked and ride around, you know, have at it on your own. By the way, if you're part of the 112 people who move to Oregon every day, I can already hear you asking, is it legal to ride your bike around naked? Well, no, it's not. Public nudity is illegal in Portland, unless it's part of a protest. Little loophole there. That's why the World Naked Bike Ride is technically a protest against oil dependency. That way, the only thing that police can make people wear is a helmet. All right, pick up your phone, use Facebook, Twitter, the hashtag HeyDan, send us an email, I don't know, whatever. Any way you can get in touch with us, do so. We're going to read some comments right after the break when we finish the story.
Time now to answer another question. This is a good one. This person wants to know, hey Dan, with so many businesses closed and people out of work, what will happen to the state of Oregon finances due to a huge drop in income taxes for 2020? Thank you, John, for that question. So the state of Oregon has a system where it must predict how much tax revenue it will bring in over a 2-year period when figuring out its budget. In years where revenue is higher than expected, the state is required to kick back the difference to taxpayers. Tax year 2018 revenues were much higher than predicted, and so 2019 filers are receiving the largest kicker ever issued by Oregon, something we talk about a lot here on the story. Now, when there is a downturn in the economy and the state doesn't bring in as much money as it expects to, then it must cut spending to account for the shortfall. Now, thanks to a voter ballot initiative passed in 2002, Oregon now has a rainy day fund which provides emergency funding for education in Oregon. Money for the rainy day fund comes from Oregon lottery revenues. According to the Oregon Secretary of State website, that fund had more than $609 million at the end of the 2017-2019 years. So how much Oregon's budget shortfall is expected to be and how drastic the cuts will be, we just don't know. But now you have some great background information. This is definitely something we'll be following here on the story. If you have questions, we want to hear them. Let us know using the hashtag HeyDan.
All right, let's talk questions and comments. Tony writing in saying, hey, you showed that list of state parks that the governor is opening this week. Where can I find that? That's on our website, kgw.com. You should find it pretty easily. Then David writing in saying, I might give your show a chance if you would please change the intro music. You seem like a good reporter. I just can't get past the bad music choice. Thanks and be well. Thanks to you as well. Look, it's not in my playlist either. It's supposed to grab your attention, okay? Stay for the music. I look at it as like a fine dining restaurant with a big neon sign outside telling you to come in. All right, and then I also want to get to one from Charles. He said, hey, California, Oregon, and Washington, the other governors entered this pact about reopening, and now they're all doing their own thing. What gives? That's a decent question. I remember them saying that and saying we're going to do what's best for each individual state, but where does the whole pact thing come into play? So we should check that out. And lastly, I got an email from Darla on Facebook who said, hi, Dan. This is really last minute, but my daughter is turning 14 today and is a big fan of you. She looks forward to seeing you every night. Could you say a happy birthday to her tonight? Her name is Avi Niece. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I can't do that. If I said happy birthday to your daughter, Avi Niece, I would have to say happy birthday to everybody. So, I mean, imagine that. If I said happy birthday, Avi Niece, suddenly we'd be flooded with emails of people wanting that. So, not tonight. Try me on a different one. I'll be back here tomorrow. That's the news. Later.